Hi, my name is Harish Govindarajan. I am a senior manager at Amazon. I have been at Amazon for 9 years now, and I currently head product and engineering for a group in the Alexa organization. Today, we're going to talk about writing, about why I think that you should learn to write to be a great product manager. Most of what I'm going to say in this talk is written down in a blog post with the same title. You will find it on harishgovindarajan.com. So you can use that for future reference. For now, you just need to sit back and listen. Thank you for being here, and I hope you find this useful. So, what are we going to cover today? I will start with making the case for why I think that writing is the shortest path to being a great product manager. I will then talk about my own journey through writing and through product management and how one has enriched the other. And then I will distill down what it is about writing that makes it so useful for product management. We'll then look at what exactly should a product manager write. And we'll close with a few tips on how to write well. These are learnings from my own writing experience. I will also provide some ideas on where you can begin your own writing journey, depending on whether you are already in a product management role or are aspiring to be in one. If all that sounds good, let's dive in. So, why is writing the shortest path to being a great product manager? As a product manager, you solve problems. Often these problems exist as vaguely stated questions. What is the right next version for product X? How do we monetize product Y? Is there an opportunity for us in market Z? You'll often hear your leader say, go figure it out. You need to convert these abstract questions into living and breathing products that your customers will love. The process of doing so often requires diving deep into the problem space and understanding the customer pain points. You then need to develop ideas on how to solve these pain points and hone in on one idea that enables you to do so in a differentiated way. Next, you persuade your leadership and stakeholders on your idea and start handcrafting the customer experience with your designers and engineers. And finally, you need to compel your customers to give your product a try. The process that I just described is a very creative process. It is more art than it is science. What this creative process of product management requires is critical thinking and clear communication. There is just one tool that facilitates both critical thinking and clear communication at the same time. It is writing. If you are a good writer, you are by default both a good thinker and a good communicator. And therefore, it is my belief that the shortest path to being a great product manager is to become a good writer. I know this through my own experience. In 2012, I started as a fresher at Amazon. I joined a team that was chartered with launching Amazon in India. I was the least experienced on that team. I was intimidated by the people around me, by the ways of the corporate, by the magnitude of the task that was ahead of us. I was anxious to find some way to prove myself worthy. I did not find it, but my director did. He decided that I would write all strategy documents for him. It's quite well known that documents written in narrative form enable the decision-making mechanism at Amazon. So writing these documents was crucial to the organization. And for me, it would be a learning exercise. My first task was to write the business case for launching Amazon's own package delivery network in India. It would cost tens of millions of dollars and would need an SVP level approval. It was a daunting first document to write. After a few days of staring at a blank Word document, I made my first good move in my writing journey. I asked for a reference document, one that dealt with a similar topic, one that would show me what good writing looks like. Once I got one, I copied whatever seemed good in that document, of course, adapting it to my topic. The result wasn't great, but I now had something that I could start showing to others. I shared it with as many people as were willing to provide feedback, and I received a lot of feedback. At first, it was overwhelming, but as I worked through each piece of feedback, trying to address each in some way, I saw the document was getting better. When it was finally reviewed by the SVP, the meeting went fine and the plan was partially approved. But more importantly, I had learned two key lessons on writing. One, to blatantly copy what is good, and two, to get as much feedback as possible to iteratively improve the writing. For the next 2 years, I wrote documents of all kinds: 3 year plans, new business proposals, requirements documents, retrospectives, forward looking plans, and so on. In a few months, my confidence began to grow. I realized I now knew more about the business than most others on the team. I also started to understand the decision making process at an executive level. And I could see how the documents I was writing were shaping the way we ran business. My role turned into a function, and soon I was leading the program management office for my organization. I have since been able to steer my career at Amazon through program management to product management to now leading product engineering teams. But my career was founded on the practice of writing. That practice enabled a discipline of critical thinking and clear communication, an ability to deal with a high degree of ambiguity and separate the signal from the noise. That in turn has led me through a fascinating journey in product management. So, what exactly did writing do for me? Why is it so useful for product management? Well, there are three reasons. One is that writing provides clarity. As a product manager, you often need to dive deep into data to draw insights, scour the internet for research, and survey customers to understand their needs. These activities generate a ton of unorganized information. Writing gives you the moment to step back and think through all the information you've gathered and ask important questions. Was your hypothesis right, or did it get invalidated? In either case, what does it mean for the idea that you're working on? What next step should you take? Good product management often boils down to asking the right next question, answering it, and then doing that on repeat. Writing facilitates this process. Often, writing will lead you to talk yourself out of your own idea or set you off in a different direction to explore an even better idea. I'll give you an example. A few years back, I had launched a tool for small size sellers to ship their customer orders. I was convinced that the right next step for this product was to start serving sellers of all sizes and shipments of all sizes. So I started writing a document to make this proposal. But as I read what I was writing, I noticed that I was making certain assumptions. And I started to question those assumptions. Writing does this for you. It makes you pause and question your thinking. It enables you to brainstorm with yourself. So, as I dug deeper on those assumptions I was making, I realized that my initial thesis was wrong. But as I thought through this, a specific feature I had written about in my draft document sparked another idea. I realized that the specific components of the tool could be extended to new customer segments and new use cases instead of the entire tool itself. I pivoted the document to make the revised proposal, which was approved, and it became a program. When you write down your thoughts, it enables you to question them. look at them from different angles, make connections between different thoughts, and to crystallize your thinking. You will then be able to transmit the clarity to others, your design team, your engineering team, leadership, and even your customers. Okay, so what else does writing do? It creates a level playing field. When a written artifact gets passed around, it brings everyone on the same page. It equalizes information across all customers. Engineers, engineering managers, designers, design leads all have the same understanding of why you're building what you're building. Once this happens, everyone is able to contribute to the product development process. Once, a product manager on my team wrote a proposal to improve our claims review process. When the engineer read this proposal and understood the problem we were trying to solve, they came back with an idea to not just improve the process, but to completely automate it within the targeted timeline. The product manager collaborated with the engineer and rewrote the product proposal to incorporate the engineer's idea, and we executed on it. It was a big win for our customers and a much better outcome than the product manager had initially envisioned. A key part of the product manager's job is to ensure ideas flow in from all directions and everyone contributes to the product development process. Writing enables this by leveling the playing field. Writing also enables better decision making. As a product manager, you are required to make several decisions about the product you're building. Good decision making requires methodical thinking. You need to come up with a list of viable options. You need to understand all the factors that will influence your decision. You then need to think through the pros and cons of each option against those decision factors. Once these are all in place, you need to weigh those pros and cons and apply judgment. Let's take a classic example. A decision point that product managers often encounter is whether to build or buy the capability required to launch their product. There could be a few different ways to build the capability in house and a few different providers from whom to buy it. This is the list of viable options. Building in house may cost less, but may take more time. It may provide you more control on the customer experience, but may require you to carry an additional operational load on your systems. So there you have some decision factors: cost, time, customer experience, operational load, and so on. And you're already starting to see some pros and cons of your options. You go through this process and determine the pros and cons of each option against each decision factor. You then need to weigh the decision factors themselves given your current situation. For instance, the pros and cons of various options might net out in a way that building in house is your best long term option. But your current realities of the business may make buying a more attractive short term option. So you may have to decide to buy in the short term while leaving the door open for in house development down the line. What I just described is a fairly complex thought exercise that for most people is very hard to do verbally or in their minds. There are way too many moving parts to keep track of, and they all influence each other in ways that you might not be able to appreciate intuitively. But when you capture all of this on paper, you gain greater control on the variables. They transform from elusive thoughts to tangible arguments that will start driving your decision making. Writing down your viable options, the decision factors, and their pros and cons will invariably lead to a better decision. At the very least, it will provide you a future reference point for why you made the decision that you made. Okay, all of that sounds good, but what should a product manager write? That product managers write product specifications, requirements documents, user stories, and so on is well known and is a standard expectation. Product specifications answer the question how the product should work. There is enough material on how to write good product specifications, so I will not spend time on it. However, there are important strategic questions that need to be answered on either side of writing product specifications. One is, what should we build and why? And the other is, how should we take the thing that we built to market? Let's take a closer look at each of these questions. What should we build and why? To effectively answer this question, you need to answer each of the following questions. Who is your customer and what is their pain point? How do you propose to solve this pain point? What are the current alternatives customers have to what you are recommending? Why will customers choose your product over these alternatives? Why you, that is your team, your organization, or your business, why are you well placed to build this product? These questions intersect in nuanced ways. For example, as you're answering the fourth question, which is why will customers choose your product over the alternatives they have, you might realize that there aren't enough good reasons based on how you've defined the product. So you might want to go back and revisit your answer to the second question, which is how do you propose to solve this pain point, and see if you can change it in some way to make the product more compelling for your customer. Writing your answers down enables you to not only be thorough in your thinking, but also be flexible and move your ideas around, turn them, look at them from different angles, and build a strategy that is robust. If you're able to answer each of these questions to your own satisfaction, it is very likely that your product idea has legs. This should now give you the conviction to convince your leadership and stakeholders to invest in your idea. If successful, you have a strong foundation upon which you can now build your product specifications. Let's look at the other question, which is how do you take the thing that you built to market? At this point, you've gone through the stages of writing your product specifications, iterating on it with your design and engineering teams. Your engineering team is nearing development completion. At this point, you need to be thinking about the following questions. Which customers should first adopt your product? How will you create awareness of the product with these customers? What mechanisms do you have to collect feedback from these customers? How will you know that your product is successful? Often, product managers get so absorbed in launching the product, they do not think deeply enough about what they will do after the launch. This leads to a situation where the product is out there, but the product manager does not know how it's doing. Spending time before launch to write down the plan for how you will take the product to market and how you will measure how it is doing will increase the chances of success for the product. Until here, I have focused the section on building a new product. But many times, product managers iterate on improving existing products. The above framework of questions applies to new features in an existing product as much as it does to new products themselves, although it might be at a smaller scale. But there is one more important question that product managers need to ask when they're iterating on an existing product. And that is, what is my product roadmap? This question breaks down into more questions. What is your backlog of features? How do you prioritize them? Why do you prioritize them that way? What will your product look like 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now? Writing down your answers to these questions will ensure you take a long-term view on the product and make short-term prioritization decisions such that you're driving your product towards the long-term goal state. So now that we know what the product manager should be writing, let's take a look at what it takes to write well. There are enough books about the style of writing that focus on form and syntax. These are useful and you should refer to them as needed. The Elements of Style by Strunk and White is a popular book on this topic. I personally like this book called The Sense of Style by Steven Pinker. You can pick up either of these books. They're good reference material to have around you. But what I want to do here is share three of my learnings about the approach to writing that have helped me become a better writer. The first and the most important of all my writing lessons is that you have to be aware of the curse of knowledge. While writing, we often assume that our readers know a lot more about the topic than they actually do. This happens because the more we get to know something, the less we remember how hard it was to learn it. And as writers, we find it difficult to imagine what it is like for someone to not know something that we know. This is the main cause of writing that is incomprehensible. Overcoming it requires a certain amount of cognitive toil on the part of the writer. But here are a few ideas. One is avoid the use of jargon, abbreviations, and technical terms. Pare them down to their essentials and explain them in simple words. Imagine you were talking to a peer who comes from a different industry or function than yours. They would have the same aptitude, but they would not have prior context to your space. Write in a way that you're explaining the topic to that peer. The second is show your draft to as many people as possible, and ideally those that are similar to your intended audience, and get feedback. If you cannot find such people, then revisit your writing after a few days when you're detached enough from it, and go through a few revisions of your draft in this way. And my last tip is for each topic or subtopic that you write about, start from what your readers already know and save the new for the end. People learn by integrating new information into their existing knowledge. When you throw a fact at them out of the blue, they will need to hang on to it until they find the relevant background in which they can embed it. And they don't like doing this. Instead, start with the background, which they're already familiar with, and then bring in the new. All right, my second writing lesson is show, don't tell. To understand something, people need to see the sights and feel the motions. The way in which thoughts occur to a writer is rarely the same way in which they are absorbed by the reader. For example, what an experimenter might describe as testing conditions is better understood by the readers as a quiet room. Right? A tactic that helps achieve showing instead of telling is to provide examples. Consider the following description of a certain product X. Product X enables customers to connect with their loved ones instantly. No ringing or no answering calls. It's all hands-free. You might think you sort of understand what Product X is. Now consider this follow-up to the previous statement. Monica, an ardent user of Product X, uses it every day to check in on her bedridden grandmother. It feels like being by her bedside, Monica says, and I can be there anytime I want. The anecdote presents Product X in the context of a scenario that most readers will relate to. When you focus on showing something to your reader versus telling something to them, you transform the act of writing to acts of talking and seeing, which comes naturally to most of us. My last lesson in writing is a simple one, and it is to omit needless words. You would have heard some version of the quote, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. It takes time and effort to pare down your writing to its bare essentials. But it is important to do. Every time you add a word to your sentence, you're imposing two cognitive demands on your reader. One is to understand the word, and the second is to fit it into the context of the sentence and to make sense of the whole. This double demand is a big reason for omitting needless words. We unknowingly introduce fluff into our sentences, which can be removed through iteration. For example, there is competition between groups for resources works just as fine as groups compete for resources. Keep in mind that there is a trade-off between clarity and brevity. You do not want to sacrifice clarity for the sake of brevity. What you want to do is find the pithiest way of delivering full clarity on your topic. Okay, great. All of this makes sense. Where do I begin, you might ask? And that's a great question. If you are already a product manager, think about what your product needs most at this point in time. Is it a new product that needs to be defined from scratch? Is it under development and needs a go-to-market plan? Is it an existing product that needs a roadmap? Based on where it is in its life stage, use the framework and questions that we discussed in what you should write as a product manager section, and write down your answers to those questions. You may want to add more questions or modify the ones that we discussed as may be needed for your specific product. Get feedback from your stakeholders on what you write and iterate based on that feedback. This should give you a taste for some of the benefits of writing that we discussed, and will hopefully encourage you to do more writing in the future. If you are an aspiring product manager, pick a topic that is top of mind for you in your current function. It could be an important decision that you need to make. It could be a roadmap for the next year or an idea that you've been wanting to work on. See what questions we discussed might apply to your situation and start writing down your answers. You will start noticing that writing enables an internal Q&A in your mind and propels your thinking forward. In closing, I will say this. I believe in the broad applicability of product management as a discipline to solve problems, not just in business, but beyond business. I also believe in writing as a tool for better thinking and better communicating, not just in the context of product management, but in general. I've been fortunate to explore the intersection of these two broad disciplines and to learn and grow through that exploration. And I wish the same for more product managers. I hope this talk will nudge some of you to give writing a shot. Thank you.